Hari Om. Chinmaya Mission welcomes you to the third day of the Gita Relay Yagna. Yesterday, in Chapter 2, Anjali Dalal expounded Sankhya Yoga, the philosophy of the self. Today, Chapter 3 will be expounded by Ritika Asrani. She will start with a recitation of the invocation prayer. Request you all to please turn off your audios and videos. Over to you, Ritika.
Hari Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagatgurum Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapanaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamritaduhe Namaha.
May I request everyone to turn off their audios and videos? Thank you. A few words about our speaker. Ritika is the youngest Sevika from South Mumbai. She's been with the Chinmaya Mission since she was in college, all of 19. Currently, she's a coordinator for the activities of the young adults, the Chinmaya Setu Kari Wing. She also conducts 2 study groups. A very warm welcome to you, Ritika. Please take over.
Thank you. Hari Om and welcome to all of you to chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, which is on Karma Yoga. So the story so far is that Arjuna has had a meltdown in the middle of the battlefield because he saw right in front of him, he saw his cousins, he saw his teacher Dronacharya, he saw Bhishma Pitamaha, and he kind of lost sight of his goal and its purpose, which was to bring dharma back into the kingdom. Now for this, war was the only option left because both Duryodhan and Dhritarashtra had actually rejected every other peace offering. So this is the situation now. Arjuna does not want to fight. Okay, he has decided and he has a whole set of arguments ready. So he's prepared with that. Now, luckily for him and also for us, he has right there with him his friend, philosopher and guide, Lord Krishna, who basically tells him, look, you must do your duty. At the end of the day, you're a Kshatriya, you're a royal warrior. So in chapter 2, we begin with Krishna giving Arjuna the highest self-knowledge. And then he moves down to the worldly level and worldly duties. And then he ends with giving him the description of the man of perfection, as we saw yesterday. So now Arjuna is very confused because he's a logical guy. He anyway doesn't want to fight. So he says, 1 minute, hang on. On one hand, you're glorifying this path of knowledge. And on the other hand, you want me to take the path of action. And that was such a terrible action where I have to fight with and potentially kill my cousins, my uncle, my teacher. So he's very confused and he says, look, Krishna, now you just tell me once and for all. Should I take the path of knowledge or the path of action? Which is the better path? And this is how we meet chapter 3 with Arjuna's question. Then Bhagwan comes and gives his answer to us. And it's a very powerful verse, so we'll chant it. I'll chant it. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Lokesmin Dvividha Nishtha Pura Prokta Mayanagha Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam. So Bhagavan says, look Arjun, in this world, there is a twofold path. The path of knowledge and the path of action. Now the path of knowledge here refers to Jnana Yoga, the direct path. And the path of action is Karma Yoga. But these two paths are not opposed to one another. It's not an either or option. They have to be followed sequentially. Because one of them is preparation for the other. So to explain this easily with an example, we have a very, very cool video of our own Pujya Gurudev. And he shows us what happens when you take the path of meditation without being prepared for it. So I'll just share the video now.
Swamiji, this Sunday. Now today I have got office. This weekend I'm going to meditate and go beyond the BMI and realize the Brahman. And Monday onwards I will tell you all about Brahman. This weekend I am visiting Brahman. And you enthusiastically declare to the family that, look, tomorrow Sunday, see that the children go out and play. And you also keep quiet. Don't break saucers and plates and make noises here. Not even the bathroom flush should be worked. I am going to meditate. So the poor wife thinks that this is a new trick. Yeah. And your early morning onward children have started asking you, Papa, when are you meditating? Not now. After breakfast. Or else know that breakfast idea will disturb me. So you take breakfast, everybody gives breakfast, and everybody has got a strange look on their eyes, looking at you that you are going to meditate. No, I don't know what is meditation, we don't know, but... And you enter. Children have been sent to the neighbor's house. There they may suffer. You are all right. And then when you are entering the room also, you told the wife. The wife also. She doesn't want to sit down because the cushions may make a noise. You go into the room, lock the room. What are you going to do? Go beyond the BMI in pure meditation. You sit down and you have heard that the great mantra is Hari Om, and you have started chanting in your mind, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Then the body said, hi, it is too hard. So immediately I said, okay, I got up. The seat is not all right, so put a cushion there, and in the cushion you sat down, and again, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Then your skin told you, I think it is too hot. And you said, yes, it is hot. So you got up, put on the fan, the ceiling fan, and you are sitting there. Hari Om, Hari Om. Suddenly the skin said, it is too fast. So you got up, slowed it down, sat down. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. Then it is that the vertebral column is saying that if there is a cushion behind, it will be nice. So you get up and get a cushion and to support your back. Again you sit down. Hari Om, Hari Om. Look, you are a slave to all the demands. That is the point. So long as you are a slave, you will not be allowed to go out. Why? Because the BMI can no longer persecute you. You are trying to become master of them. They are now today masters in you. They don't want to give up their chairs. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. I think there is coffee decoction in the kitchen. And that woman is so careless that she will throw it away in the wash basin. 1 cup of hot coffee and then meditate. How nice. You get up, you open the door, and the lady is worried. Now what is coming out? It must be God himself coming out. No, nothing. and you make directly to the kitchen. Think of the situation. So she comes behind. Seva bhav. What do you want, honey? I will give you. No, I don't want anything. But I thought that if there is decoction there, then don't throw it away. Nowadays the prices are very high. A cup of coffee, you go inside. Do you think that you can? The more you try to meditate, the more the mind will persecute. At this moment, even though I am allowed to say that this body, mind and intellect are mine, honestly speaking, I belong to them. I am not a slave. The local constitution may give you all the freedom. It's the freedom of the slaves. None of us is free. All of us are utter silent slaves, hapless slaves, miserable slaves to our own physical, mental and intellectual persecution.
That was such a funny video. But this is what happens. Isn't this familiar? Even we feel like that. So this is what the requirement is for the path of contemplation or the path of meditation. So if there is a mind that is actually very quiet, serene and calm, and is not rushing around in the world outside, then for such a person and such a seeker, this path is okay. But what about for the rest of us? Like we saw in the video just now. You think such a person will be okay sitting and meditating? No, in fact, for us then, the path of action is recommended. So finally, we come to the crux that what is Karma Yoga? And Karma Yoga is defined as, refers to basically selfless action, which purifies the mind and makes it ready for meditation and contemplation. So Karma Yoga is the first step on the path of spiritual evolution. So now we've understood this much, that we have to act. Because no action is not a solution. That is just escapism. And if you think about it, man cannot live without action. As long as we are awake and alive, we have to act. Even if the body is still, the mind and the intellect are constantly acting and moving. So Gurudev says that action is the insignia of life. So, okay. Now Arjun also doesn't have the clarity of mind to take the second path. In fact, Krishna tells him that if you just think that you're going to take this path and avoid the path of action, then you are being a hypocrite. Krishna actually says that. So act we must. Now, one thing to remember is that actions can actually bind us, which means they not only give an outward result, but actions also give us an inward result. So when I perform an action, it is likely to either make me like it and want to repeat it, or then get repelled by it and hope that I never have to repeat it. So now these inner results and these resulting tendencies are called vasanas. All those who have been in the study group, you remember the first day we heard about vasanas. And some of them we are born with, some of them we acquire in life. Now the thing is, they don't let us sit comfortably and peacefully. There's always these niggles and urges going on in the background. So they keep prompting us outward to do something or the other. So how do we overcome these? So the answer is correct action. Now the kind of action we will see, and it's the kind of action that will purify, eliminate these vasanas and prepare us for the higher path. So the solution lies in how to act. So now what does Krishna say? There are some sadhanas to follow, looking at the attitude to action. So first he says, we have to perform our duties controlling the senses. See, the senses and the sense organs are prone to run outward. And anyway, the world is full of temptations out there. We know that. And this makes us lose focus from our goal. So Gurudev has said very nicely that temptation is only our reaction to something. Everybody is not equally tempted by everything out there, except for Alfonso Mango, because those have the power, the ultimate power over everybody. So we have to maintain some degree of sense control, and we have to be able to fulfill our responsibilities. Otherwise, these senses can derail us from the path. So let's look at this again like an example. Let's say that I have a goal, okay, to prepare for this, for Karma Yoga chapter 3. Now I decide that, okay, it's coming up. So I'm going to sit down at my desk and I'm going to work. So he starts with a question by Arjuna. Now I get distracted 1 minute. I also have a question to the bread wala. Why has he stopped giving me multi-grain bread? Okay, then the mind says, no, but that is not the important question. Let's come back to what we were doing. Okay. 2 minutes later, bigger temptation. Now I'm hungry. This I can't ignore and avoid. So I say, okay, I'll just go and make myself a snack without the multigrain bread. So I do that. And while I'm coming back to my desk, I see my husband sitting and watching something new on TV. So I'm like, oh, this looks interesting. I'm not going to sit and watch. I'll just see what he's watching. And then I'll go back to my preparation. Now, unfortunately, what he was watching was episode 1 of season 1 of Game of Thrones. Now, what chance does the mind have to go back to the desk? So 40 minutes later, I'm still sitting there only. I have not come back to my desk. The mind doesn't want to go back to Karma Yoga, Gita Relay, chapter 3. So this is what happens. Our mind gets hijacked by the senses. How much time we waste on the phone. We all know it and we've all done it. On social media, on games, right? So we have to have a degree of sense control because we can do it. So that is the first sadhana that Krishna gives us. Now, in order to control our outer actions, I have to control the senses. Now, this has to be done by the mind. The mind has to be the police over here. For the mind to effectively do this, it needs something higher, something more worthy. So we have to feed it something a little better. And then in the absence of all these futile and draining activities, we will get energy. Because now the mind is no longer involved in all these silly things. And like money, energy saved is energy earned. This extra energy that I get, that I have saved, where should I put that? Into right action, into fulfilling our duties, which will purify us and make us ready for the higher. So this brings us to the second sadhana, where Krishna says, perform your duties with joy by dedicating them to the higher without getting attached to the result. Now, some amount of this we did see yesterday. Basically, Ishwar Arpan Buddhi. That is an attitude that I have to have. Dedicating something to the higher means anything higher than me. And the highest ideal here is Ishwar, is the Lord. So dedicate every action to the Lord. And this completely purifies my ego. Like when a sports person plays for her country, she performs much better because her inspiration is there. Her goal is only so much higher. Similarly for us, when we offer every action to Ishwar, we get inspired. Now, if that's our attitude, then what Ishwar gives us in return is prasad. Now, we don't go to the temple and choose prasad, right? At least I hope most of us don't do that. So whatever result comes from the action, we should accept with the same reverence as we're accepting prasad in the temple. This is Karma Yoga. This is one very, very important sadhana, and this is something we can all do. So basically, what does this mean? No insistence, no resistance. Again, that we saw a little bit of yesterday. Go with the flow. Whatever comes your way, just deal with it as best you can. Do your best and leave the rest. This is what Gurudev has also told us. And we teach this to our kids, right? No insistence, no resistance. Eat whatever is put in front of you on the table. I want to see that plate empty. We say that, right, as parents. Imagine if we had to pander to our kids insistences and resistances, there would be only a certain type of food group on the table. And we all know what that is. And there would be absolutely none of the good stuff, the greenery, that would be missing. So, okay, if there should be no insistence and no resistance, then what should my attitude be? Cheerful acceptance. Accept what comes our way. Okay, fine, now COVID happened. So what? Do your best there also. Anyway, I can't control the outside circumstances, right? So it's very easy to be happy because of something. The real challenge and the real achievement is to be happy in spite of. That is what Karma Yoga teaches us. So actions performed with this kind of an attitude purify us. Now the next sadhana is a very important sadhana. Again, it's called the Yajna spirit. So we will chant it. So Bhagavan says, Yajñartat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. What is the Yajna spirit? This refers to selfless actions dedicated to the higher, where all differences have been sunk. There is no aspect of I, me, and mine together, like in a yajna. One of the best examples of this is nature. Everything in creation has it. The sun, the plants, the trees, unequivocally. If the sun is shining, it will shine for everybody. And with what abundance nature gives, she only gives. Sometimes we don't even deserve it, and yet she gives. What ulterior motives or selfish concerns does nature have for us or from us? Nothing. They are just giving. So we are all born with this capacity for this attitude. We can all behave like this. Whether or not we choose to depends on us. In fact, humans are the only species who have a choice whether or not to act with this attitude. This is a decision that I make. Yajna spirit. If I decide to live like this, then in fact I'm living with the rhythm of the universe. And Krishna says clearly, you will be blessed right back. And if I don't, if I just keep taking without giving, without sharing, then in fact he says, you are a thief. That's what a thief does. Keep taking. So these are some of the sadhanas, the attitude that we have to have on how to act. Next, let's look at what are my motives and my intentions. See, actions by themselves are neutral. It is the motive that determines the quality of the action. And we have this common example of a surgeon and a murderer, right? Both of them will take a knife or a scalpel. Both of them will slice it through somebody else. And in both cases, that person may die. But one of them is penalized, even legally, and the other is not, because of the motives. So selfish actions only for me and mine create more vasanas. Selfless attitudes don't, but those are possible only when I have a higher ideal in mind, when I have that spirit of dedication. So here now, Krishna, the ultimate management guru, he gives us the best secret, the secret of success, in one single verse, which is the backbone of Karma Yoga. So I'm just going to share a PPT for this. So we see the secret of success in Karma Yoga. This is verse 30. And verse 30 says, Mai sarvani karmani sanyasyadhyatma chetasa nirashir nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigatajvara. Krishna says, actions done for the higher good purify our motives. work hard with a higher purpose in mind, the highest being the Lord. De-link from the ego. Then inspiration comes. See, when we're not bogged down by me and mine, the quality of work also executed by us is of the highest nature. And with the Lord as my goal, inspiration fills me. There is no question of sagging shoulders and negative thoughts in my actions at all. We are filled with dynamism and creativity. Haven't all of us experienced this at some point in our lives? It could have been in school, at a school play, or at work, or even at home when there's something major going on. And everyone comes together, puts aside their differences, works together for a higher ideal. Naturally, there will be success. We have also tasted success like this. There's no doubt about it. And then Krishna says, keep the mind in the present without the leakages of past regrets and future anxieties. I hope right now everybody's in the present moment. This is a big secret. So these are the leakages of the mind. Regrets of the past and worries or anxieties for the future. Now the past, by the way, has gone. Okay, nothing can be done about that. Okay, I took the learning and I've moved on. The future has not even come, but yet we worry. And have you noticed that half the things we worry about don't even happen? So it's so pointless. In fact, as the quote says, worry is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. So these leakages from the mind, they're called leakages because they pretty much drain us, right? And they deplete our entire energy and enthusiasm. So this is the secret that Bhagwan gives. Following this, success will be yours. And we've seen a lot of examples even in the world outside. Sundar Pichai says that a person who is happy is not because everything is right in his life. He is happy because his attitude towards everything in his life is right. And these are successful people. So a true karma yogi lives dynamically in the present moment, says Krishna. Now, all of these sadhanas given above are ways to purify, eliminate vasanas without acquiring any new ones. So this is all win-win for us, right? On one hand, we're removing them. On the other hand, no new ones are being created. And then the art of karma yoga is given by Krishna in a single sentence, where he says, by withdrawing our sense organs from the useless activity in the world, we save energy and put it forth into the right action with a right attitude without any attachment. So now right action here implies our duties. So now we come to what to do, what duties to perform. So Krishna gives us everything. This is extremely thorough. Besides duties towards others, there are duties to myself as well. Duties towards others, we all know. We're all living, no man is an island. We have responsibilities and we know our duties. So there are daily duties for the body, which involve cleanliness, keeping the body healthy, exercise. This we have mastered. This we in fact spend lots of time on this. Then there are duties for the mind, daily sadhanas, japa, puja, chanting, prayer, whatever calms the mind. So these are actually being prescribed by Krishna as a daily duty. Then for the intellect, no bunking study class, reading, expanding my knowledge. And then there are special or occasional duties which come up from time to time. So this is what to do. Now we come to how to do. How should I perform my duties? We've seen all the attitudes with which we have to perform action. All of them require us to de-link from the ego, keep our minds in the present, and act. They are all sadhanas. So these are some more of the attitudes with which we can do our duties. Diligently and happily. And all duties in life, not just the ones that I like. Dedicated to a higher ideal. We saw that Ishwararpan Buddhi was dedicating it to the highest. Here, there has to be something else also higher than me. My own spiritual growth, that is a higher ideal. The nation, the team, all of that. Do the duties with faith and understanding in my own abilities and in the chosen ideal. So understand your goal, have faith in yourself. When you have given up action to Him, He is there to take care of you. And we will be seeing this in many other chapters. When Bhagwan says, dedicate all your actions to me, you really think He's going to let you fall? Absolutely not. So have faith and understand your own goal. Use your head. Do our duties with patience and perseverance. See, duties done out of compulsion or as a burden become very boring and tiring. And then, they drag us down. We get exhausted. Even the simplest of things, the routine that we have to do every day, even that can become a total downer for us. And that will also deplete our energy. But have you seen a newborn mother with a baby? She does the same thing 5, 7, 10 times in a day, over and over again, every day. Feed, clean, rinse, repeat. Does she get tired? Is it a burden for her? No. Because she's doing this out of love. So we have to have the ability to have a healthy attitude towards our own duties. Now, we saw what to do. We have seen how to do. Now let's see why to do. Why should we do duties? Because they make us mentally strong. See, because we're doing them in spite of our whims and fancies. We're doing what needs to be done. So the mind automatically gets disciplined. They make us calm because we're doing them with the right attitude. And Gurudev again says, do your best and leave the rest. Your responsibility is to the action. As we saw yesterday also. You leave the result. Don't worry about it. And whatever result finally comes, accept it cheerfully. So this kind of takes away the whole onus and control that we need to have all the time. It keeps us calm that I have done my best. Now I can sleep peacefully. Then they make us humble. When we do our duties, they make us humble. Because as we saw in the Yajna spirit, we're getting so much from life. We're getting so much from the universe. Right? How much are we giving back? So when you do your duty with the right attitude, you will also feel, okay, this is a good way for me to give back actually. They make us humble. They help us to rise above selfishness, above the feelings of me and mine. And we saw this. We have to de-link from our ego. And they purify the mind as we do them without attachment to our likes and dislikes. We'll be seeing a little bit about likes and dislikes a little later. So finally, duties are making us strong, pure. This is what we want. This is what everybody is looking for in life. A stronger mind. And a stronger mind can help me to achieve so much more. Lots of people say that. This is a quote from one of the best tennis players in the world, Roger Federer. Even he says there's no way around hard work. So embrace it. Don't run away from it. Now, like all good millennials, we've heard all this, Chalo. But we need to be convinced. And we will be convinced if somebody explains to us and gives us in writing, okay, these are the benefits that you're going to get out of this. Then I will do Karma Yoga. Okay? So we also have chapter 3 also includes the benefits of Karma Yoga. As we just saw, the mind becomes quieter, it becomes subtle, it becomes more content and peaceful. we have a positive, healthy attitude towards life because we're not brooding. We have accepted and we're cheerful about it. There is no worrying about the past, worrying about the future, nothing. It's happily, dynamically in the present moment. We develop courage because it takes courage to offer all actions to Him and to be okay with whatever comes your way. So we develop courage while doing that. We get intellectual clarity and greater focus, alertness, and dynamism at the intellectual level. And with all this, naturally, the efficiency and quality of our work is excellent. Like Bhagavan said, the secret of action, then success will come. So these are all the benefits of Karma Yoga. So now Krishna has given us all of this, right? What to do, why to do, how to do. But there's also a higher purpose to all this. See, for us as seekers, this makes a lot of sense. These are things that we can actually follow. To Arjun, he says, now I'm going to tell you something else, Arjun. You're doing all these duties. I've explained a lot to you. But there is a higher purpose in doing action. Karma Yoga can also be used as a step towards the ultimate goal, moksha, which means you can actually attain moksha and attain moksha only by performing action. And to convince him, he says, there are examples in our history, like King Janak, who have demonstrated this for us. But for that, you have to act without any selfishness, without any attachment, and in the service of others. So Karma Yoga can actually be used as a direct step to liberation. And then finally, Bhagavan tells Arjun, listen, if for nothing else, perform right actions because you're a leader. Your entire army is here. They're looking up to you for inspiration. At least for them, perform the right action. And for many of us here also in this talk, many of us are or have been in leadership positions. You know that. Culture flows top down. And people are going to emulate what you do, not what you say. Even at home, we see that, right? When you want your kids to do something or behave in a certain way, it's a known fact that they will follow what you do, not what you say. So here, Arjuna has also shown the path of Karma Yoga for a different purpose, not only about me and mine, but towards a highest goal, and also as a leader of his own army. So Krishna says finally that actions are ordained for everybody, except for the realized masters. Because they are anyway acting without the attitude of me and mine. They anyway have so much selfless service. Look at our own Puja Gurudev. How much he has done, how much he has achieved. And all of this is out of love and compassion. Nothing for himself. So if we also perform the correct action with the correct motivation and the correct attitude, without any attachment to results, then we are performing Karma Yoga. And it works. As Nike says, just do it. Just get down and do it. So now as seekers, we have seen what to do. Krishna, the Master Guru, he is going to be giving us a 360-degree overview. So he says, okay, now on one hand, I've told you what to do. But now let me show you the flip side of it. What happens to those who don't follow this path? Because that is equally important, honestly, for us to see, right? It's good to know and to see all the to-dos. But what will happen to me if I don't do? What is the consequence of that? So now Krishna tells us that those who don't work with this Karma Yoga spirit, they act without discrimination and out of delusion. They get deluded and then they have no discrimination to act. So they are governed by their likes and dislikes, raga and dvesha. And these two, likes and dislikes, they are compared to and called also daylight robbers. Why? What do they rob us of? Our peace of mind. When we're under the sway of raga and dvesha, there is no freedom. There is no peace of mind. So what is the way out of this? How do I get rid of them and not be under their sway and hold? So Bhagavan says, By doing your Swadharma. On day 1, we had a question. What is Swadharma? So Bhagavan tells us here. He says, other than all the duties which we have enumerated earlier, that is Swadharma for sure. But there is also what we do, which we are naturally inclined to do. Our own natural inclinations. We're all born with some natural talent or the other, right? Some things that come very easily to us. And when we do them, they feel effortless, they feel right. That is my Swadharma. Doing that means I'm doing my Swadharma. Even in school, today you see, in fact, all kids at a certain age have to go through an aptitude test. Now, what is this aptitude test for? It is to tell your kids and to tell you what your natural flair is, what you are good at. And then you'll follow that path in life. So now Krishna has been saying it for so long. In fact, he said it first. Before all the IB schools, Krishna said it. That please do your aptitude test, know what you are good for and do that. That is your Swadharma. Play to your strengths, he says. No copying others, no herd mentality. Because you are unique, so don't copy. In fact, he says, please avoid paradharma. Do what you have to do, your own Swadharma. So here, he's giving us a way to use actions to get out of the bondage of actions. So by doing my own Swadharma, doing the right thing in the right way, the right attitude, I can get out of the bondage of actions. Now, none of this, everything we've heard so far, none of this is difficult to understand, right? It's not rocket science. So then why do we land up doing the wrong action? Because we all do it. It does happen. So Krishna explains. So he explains to us, why do we sin? Now, first of all, let's understand the meaning of sin. Because, this popular culture has ruined it for so many. We hear the word pap or pap karma and our minds just go somewhere else. So first he says, what is sin? Sin is not only unrighteous action. Sin also refers to all the actions which cause agitations in me. That is called as sin. Do we not act very often and then we regret it immediately after? Then we spend so much time justifying it to others also, in our own heads also. We do that, right? So all of these actions which I do, which causes me agitation, is basically coming back to disturb me only, right? So sin is also when we compromise on our own ideals, because it returns to agitate us. So then why do we sin? When we know what is right, why do we land up following the wrong action or doing the wrong thing? Because there is a divide between what we intellectually understand and what we eventually practice. This is the problem. I know what needs to be done, but somehow I don't know what happened and I ended up doing the wrong thing. I know, but I don't do. And in fact, I do otherwise. And then I get involved in all sorts of scraps. And then I spend so much time and energy trying to extricate myself from this whole mess that I've only created. So agitating. This is called sin. So what stops us from knowing and doing that I know also and I do also? Why can't I do that? So Krishna says, what is stopping you are two enemies. You have two enemies and they are both inside you only. These are not outward enemies like the gurus. They are here. Kama and Krodha. We saw this yesterday also in the ladder of fall in verse 62-63 of chapter 2. It's one of the most powerful verses. This talks about Kama and Krodha. So Krishna says that it is desire, Kama, that causes this entire paradox in us, where I know but I don't do. It's the root cause. And desire also causes anger, right? Because when I don't get what I want, that same desire manifests as anger. And these strong emotions are caused in us because of all the agitation, because of all the rajas in us. Rajas is agitation, activity. Activity at the physical level is okay, it's good in fact, but not hyperactivity. Because that causes more agitations in me mentally. And a mind that is agitated is not a comfortable place to live inside of. It's like living in a house which is 24/7 construction. Imagine how messy it is, the level of noise. Would we want to live there? Then why are we making our minds like this? So these are the two enemies, Kama and Krodha, and they cloud our intellect. So once they have come in, because we allow these desires to come in, once they are in, they also cloud our intellect. They cover our judgment. So all strong selfish desires that we have and that we entertain, and the consequent anger, Krishna calls them like a fire. He's saying this is like an all-devouring fire. It's just eating up everything that's coming in its way. And as you know, fire can't be satiated easily. So they come in and they cloud our intellect and they cover our judgment. And then Krishna gives 3 beautiful analogies. It's so stunning. You know, this is why studying Vedanta is so exciting, because the most difficult and the most sublime messages are given in such beautiful ways that we can't help but remember them. So Krishna says that the desires clouding our intellect are of 3 types, depending on the quality and intensity of my attachment. The first one, he says, it's a little faint, like the smoke from a fire. So when there's a fire burning, a little smoke, you can't see the fire. So there, the seeker has a little effort to put in, just blow away the smoke, and then the brilliance of the fire can shine forth. So this is a light clouding. Then for some seekers, the clouding of the intellect and the covering of the better judgment is a little tougher, like dust on a mirror. Now, the mirror also prevents me from seeing my own reflection. But here the seeker has to make a little more effort to clean the surface of the mirror so that the inner reflection shines through. So here a little more effort is required. The third way that our intellect can be clouded is compared to the fetus in the womb, where the desires are so deep-rooted in us, the covering is so strong that time is also needed. Yes, self-effort is required, but time is also needed. You can't hurry up a baby being born, right? You can't rush that process. So similarly, those seekers who are so deluded and their intellects are so clouded, with a lot of self-effort, with the passage of time, some few knocks in life also happen. Finally, the intellect is clear. So these are the 3 examples that Krishna gives to show us how different seekers at different levels, depending on the quality and intensity of our attachment, how we get deluded. Now the next question is, okay, if these enemies are there inside us, then where do they hide? These desires. Where does it hide in us? So Bhagavan says, they have 3 hiding places in you. There are 3 hideouts: the senses, the mind, and the intellect. And this we only allow, by the way. They come in, but we allow them to stay. In fact, we say, please come, Atiti Devo Bhava, come, make yourself comfortable. No rent, no termination date. Stay as long as you want. Aap hi ka ghar hai. So they come and they stay. Who wants to leave such a nice surrounding? So the desires come in. And the process is so subtle, you know, how they come. Half the time we don't even realize when we are picking up desires. The ones we know we willfully entertain. There are hundreds others which keep coming inside us and we're not even aware of them. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm going window shopping. Okay, I don't need anything. I genuinely don't need anything. But I'm just going to go window shopping. I'm just looking. I'm looking. 15 minutes later, I want everything that I saw in the window display, including the window, because it was so pretty. You saw the moldings and the etchings. Amazing. So now I want all this. Okay, now that's bad enough. Does it stop there? No. When I go back home, there's a constant chatter going on in my mind. It's so pretty. These windows I don't like. Achan, what about that thing which I saw? That would look so nice over here on this mantelpiece. Now, these are building. Then the intellect says, okay, but it's expensive. Do it now, later. No, no, no. It's very pretty. Let's buy it now. So then the intellect also says, yeah, actually, let's buy it now. Because by getting all this home, I'll actually have more time for my spirituality. So that also happens, right? So we're hooked. We're hooked at all three levels: the senses, the mind, and the intellect. So what is the way out of this then? Bhagavan says, control the senses. You have to have the ability to control the senses because that is the entry point. Oh, so then I should just sit at home, don't go anywhere, close my eyes, don't look, don't do anything. No, that's not what it means. Just don't unnecessarily get attached to all of this. Learn to control yourself. Draw your own line. This is what Bhagavan says. And there's a reason why all religions talk about a certain level of self-control and sense control. We're not saying self-denial. That's not what it means at all. By all means, please. But learn where to draw the line. Our problem is that we identify with the lowest level of our personality. And then we start getting attached and attracted to everything that comes our way. So by first getting control over our senses, then the mind, and then the intellect, we reach that highest state, which is the subtlest of all, the self. This is how Karma Yoga is a preparatory path. And with this thought and advice to Arjuna, that Arjuna, you slay your enemy. Your enemy is desire, the desire within. That's coming at you like a roaring fire. You slay that enemy of desire and lift yourself. And this is how he encourages and inspires Arjuna to finally get up. He gives him that, that come on, lift yourself. So for us also, at our own level, we have to move from karma to karma yoga. We have to look at what we're doing in terms of our duties and responsibilities, how we're doing in terms of our attitudes and dedication to the higher, why we're doing in terms of our intent, and then we're following Karma Yoga. We've seen so many different ways that Bhagavan has given us now, just in 1 hour, how many solutions he's given us, how many sadhanas we can follow for this. And finally, to end with a quote by our very own Gurudev, he says, lift yourself by yourself. We have it in us. We can and we must. Hari Om. So this is the end of the talk. If anybody has any questions, you can raise the little blue hand. And then we can take them one by one. Anisha?
Yeah. Hello, Ritika. Hari Om. Very, very succinctly put session and lot of thoughts actually. So the questions are taking time to appear because the text is very, very deep, I believe, and that's what's happening to other people as well. So what you have said is right, but it is very difficult to practice, and it needs a lot of conviction to practice this. Yes, and to teach maybe younger minds and even adults. I mean, it's very difficult to change from how we have been leading the life and listening to satsang and then changing. It needs a lot of deliberate action and conviction on our part. Would you like to say something on when one wants to give up, or I'm a mother, so I'm looking from the point of view of how to motivate children, because sometimes the language becomes very one track for them. You are only talking about controlling senses. When will I have fun? How will I have fun? Is there something that you would like to add here? I'm sure the text is all very good, but while we are doing it practically, is there something else that you would like to add? I wonder.
Okay, so if I understand right, and I'll try my best to answer, but if I understand right, the question is, how do we motivate kids, right? And that's one thing that I know a lot of people have. So yeah, I think partly you answered it correctly, that you have to talk to them in their language, because for especially a teenager, for them to understand our language is not easy. If you see, Krishna also spoke to Arjuna in his own language. Krishna did not need to spend all this time with his friend, but he wanted to pull him out. So he started talking logic to him. He started telling him success stories. So with kids also, of course, depending on their own temperaments and what it is that you're trying to motivate them towards. I mean, specifically, I can just tell you that in our own Chinmaya mission, we have a lot of activities for that age group, whether it's classes, camps, or other get-togethers, movie nights. And in fact, we have some really fun stuff. And it's very different to this. So they are not sitting like us at a table and just hearing someone speak. So for them at their level, their classes and their activities are different, which interest them. So I would say that we at Chinmaya Mission have been doing this for a while. So if you'd like, you can have your kids join us. That is one option. Yes, Bhavi?
Hi, thank you. That's really well explained, logically. Thank you for that. I had one question on, where Gurudev talked about keeping your mind in the present without kind of past regrets and future anxiety. So the tendency really is to keep kind of planning, even especially that happens to me during meditation. Also, you're like thinking about what you do next and how. So would you suggest any steps to work on that to kind of keep your mind, in the present and not get lost in the future or the past?
Okay, so I think your sound was a little unclear, but from what I understand, it's, can we have some steps for keeping the mind in the present moment? Yeah, I'm not sure if that was the question, but let's take that. So yeah, there are many things we can do to keep our mind in the present moment. First of all, we have to make an active effort to stop worrying about the past. See, our mind very naturally also keeps running back to the past. So you have to keep bringing it back. So the first level is at least be aware. Every time you're pushing your mind back, bring it back. Every time it goes, keep bringing it back. And these are some of the sadhanas that we do in our classes also, of bringing the mind back again and again. Second is when you say the tendency to worry about the future, why are you worried? See, if you look at it at the highest level and you have actually offered your actions to God, He will take care of you. So then why worry? If you look at it logically also, just simply, who knows what is going to happen in the future? So again, why worry? So you have to use your intellect to actually police your mind and keep it in one place. Again, a lot of this will be coming in the next 15 days as well, as to how to keep the mind in one place. The best way to do it, honestly, is one of the sadhanas that we have called japa. And again, this will come later, so I'm not going to say too much about it. But whether it is japa, it is prayer, it is puja, all of these sadhanas are actually meant to keep the mind in one place. Once the mind has learned how to be disciplined, like a good soldier, it will go and stay where you want it to go and stay. It won't have its own agenda. It'll stay in one place. So some of these sadhanas that we even do in our study classes are for this only. How to tame the mind and how to keep it in one place. Yes, Anushka.
Hi, hi, Ritika. That was a great lecture, very articulately summarized chapter 3. So from what I understand, in a nutshell, Karma Yoga is do your action with an attitude of devotion to the Lord and without being attached to the results, right? I mean, in a nutshell, very briefly, right? Is that what is that what it is? I mean, I just wanted a confirmation because my question is from a personal point of view. It's that, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's say I'm a singer, I'm a musician, I'm a songwriter. Okay, so yes, I get it. So if I'm to be like a karma yogi, and let's say I believe this is my swadharma and I follow this path and I write music and I release songs and put them out there. So I mean, how does one really detach yourself from the results, from expecting results? I mean, how do I become a karma yogi? Because naturally, I mean, it's natural that I would want some degree of success. I mean, it's natural that I desire that I'm doing something and I desire some degree of success, right? Because I mean, I'm putting music out there and I want it to be heard. So, I mean, to become a karma yogi and to still follow this sort of swadharma of yours and follow this profession, I mean, how do I go about it? I mean, how do I treat this profession then? I mean, to really be in the true spirit of karma yoga.
Okay. So first of all, don't perform my swadharma. You have to perform your swadharma. That's what we just saw. But yeah, it is very natural to want and expect success. Because let's be honest, the way we are right now, and we are all seekers, but yet we are driven and motivated by success to a large extent outside. Now, karma yoga, and you said it correctly, where you do your best and leave the rest. Understood correctly, and of course, over time and a lot of practice, we understand that who's the doer? See, once you finish the 18 chapters of the Gita, at least some knowledge comes that who am I? Who is the doer? Why does everything have to be about me and mine only? Am I really making this entire universe spin? Really, is that what I am? You start understanding that there is a higher power. There is something much more at play than just me. At that point, when that understanding comes, I recognize my real value, not in terms of money, but the fact that I have to be an instrument. Krishna's flute is a beautiful learning and a beautiful teaching about how one should behave. So when we say be the instrument, be like the flute. Have no personal agenda, which is why it requires courage, but it also builds courage when we behave like this. So in our sense of the world, yes, you're a musician, you're going to write songs. Do your best. Just write it with all your passion and all your energy and whatever it is you'd like to say. Try and see whether it is possible not to keep thinking about the result. And it's okay. Whatever happens, let it happen. So what? See, we have this habit and this attitude of going on and on saying, what if? Why can't we say, so what? So what, yeah? 20 years from now, you're going to look back and smile. But 20 years from now, if you have been following Karma Yoga, you would have arrived. So Bhagwan himself gives this answer in verse 30 also, where he says, live in the present, de-link from the ego, no I, me and mine. And the most important is have the ability to dedicate our actions to the higher. See, that I know it sounds easy to say, but that is an attitude that I have to develop. Where I say that there's no me in the equation. There's no I and I want. There is no I, me and mine in the equation at all. So that attitude has to be developed over time. Once we do that, as Swamiji explained very nicely yesterday, we let go of certain things which were so important to us. Not forcibly, very naturally. They just drop. So I hope I've tried to sort of take your question. Yes, Jyoti Masi, Destiny.
Thank you, Ritika. So young, so lucid, so penetrating. Loved it. On behalf of Chinmaya Mission and Swami Swatmananji, I would like to thank the two Yajmans for sponsoring today's talk. Kirti Vij and family, in memory of our dear Ushaji Vij, a very close devotee of Swami Chinmayananji, our Gurudev, and Rohit and Varun Mani. May Gurudev's blessings be ever on your family. We thank you all for taking out time to taste the nectar of our great scriptures. If you would like to send any donations for the mission's various activities, please do so on the link that is mentioned. Chinmaya Mission conducts a Gita chanting competition every year to teach and encourage the practice of chanting. This year, the competition will be held online. A short video clip will be put up on the Gita Relay Telegram. Please do partake. Now we will have the Gita Aarti.
Om Jai Bhagavad Gita, Maya Jai Bhagavad Gita, Hariya Kamala Viharini, Sundar Sugunite. Om Jai Bhagavad Gita, Karma Sumarma Prakashini, Kama Sakti Hara.
Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow for the Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Thank you.